morning, good morning, good morning. Uh, Sorry, I am having technical difficulties here this morning. I was all ready to go, and then all of a sudden nothing would load. I'm a little bit flustered. I also have a poppy, and I could not find my poppy when I went to go grab it. So, oh, I hate it when you think you're all ready, and then nothing works out. Anyway, um, it is November the 9th, 2021. Welcome to the 10-minute morning brought to you by Beachside Burgers. Burgers are better at the beach. Also this week, Enbridge. Enbridge Vision is to be the leading energy delivery company in North America. We deliver the energy people need and want to heat their homes, to keep their lights on, to keep them well and connected. We operate across North America, fueling the economy and people's quality of life. We moved about 25% of the crude oil produced in North America. We transport nearly 20% of the natural gas consumed. Alrighty. Oh, a little small. Oh. Anyway, SVHL rankings this week. I will also post them. We're going to go through this very quickly because I got other things I want to do. Keniston, Eston, Central Butte, Loreburn, Outlook, Delisle, Rosetown, Lucky Lake, and then Kyle and Dinsmore tied for the bottom because they haven't played yet. Something that's getting more near and dear my heart all the time. It's always been there. I think we're getting close to Remembrance Day. There will be no show on Remembrance Day. Letting you know. I just can't imagine what those families went through during that time. I just can't. I picture in my mind a small farmhouse out wherever, a family having supper, and then one of the kids explaining to their parents they're signing up for the war, right? I can't imagine the heartbreak and everything else that goes along with it. Anyway, so what I'm doing today is I've got today and tomorrow. I've just picked out a few stories I'd like to share with you. It's an excerpt from a book I have here. It's not mine. Just want to be aware of that. This is by Henry Bennett. Last June, before we graduated from high school, our history teacher had spent the class telling us about the horrors of war and lecturing us not to be too hasty to join up. His brother had been killed in World War I, and our teacher knew the pain of the war. He also knew, as we did, that most of us would soon be involved in the greatest war in history. The government was starting an aeronautical school that would last most of the winter, and so anyone interested in aeroplanes, as I was, it seemed to be the place. In March, the classes finished. We wrote our exams. Everyone passed, and to no surprise, we were asked if we wanted to join the Air Force. There were 40 in the class, and only 2 did not. My number was so-and-so, and in a very short time, on a dark and cold April morning, I was waving goodbye from the train to my mother and girlfriend and was on my way to Manning Depot in Toronto. Manning Depot was where innocent boy from the prairie soon began to learn the facts of life. First, you learned that when you took off your civilian clothes and put on a uniform, your freedom you had known, it went as well. You were told what to do, when to do it. You were told when to get up in the morning, which was too early, when to eat, when to turn the lights out at bedtime, when you could leave the depot, when you could be back, and sometimes where you could or could not go, or when you did get out. Manning Depot was where you lost your privacy because what you were doing was also being done by scores of people at the same time, no matter what. It took a while to become accustomed to this. Manning Depot was on the exhibition grounds in Toronto. The Royal Winter Fair had been there a few months previous, and where we were billeted had been a cow barn. The animals were gone, but the smell lingered on, and so did the rats. There were rows and rows of double bunks, and trying to catch a rat was almost impossible. In the middle of one night, there was a great scream and commotion. Some poor airman had been bitten on the face while he was sleeping. Manning Depot was where we learned to march. We marched and we marched and we marched until we marched in our sleep. We learned to salute, and we learned some very foul language from the flight sergeant who thought we were the dumbest people on earth. Words that most of us had not known existed. But for all of this, we were proud of our uniform. And for most of us, had our picture taken downtown to send home to our folks. Finally, when the powers to be decided they knew how to march, salute, and stand at attention when waiting for our commanding officer to inspect us, sometimes keeping us standing for an hour or more until he arrived. We were on our way again, this time to the trade school. And then he talks about going to trade school. When he was in trade school, a shock was in store for me one morning during the CO's parade and inspection. The CO halted in front of me and looked me up and down and said, "Sergeant, put this man on charge. He needs a shave." I couldn't believe my ears. I'd never had a shave in my life, but I have since, and nearly every day. On charge meant something was going to happen to me. Fortunately, I only lost my weekend pass and didn't have to work in the kitchen peeling potatoes or something even worse. Trenton was on peacetime. Hours were 9 to 4 when I arrived, but soon, then he was placed in Trenton, talked about, on 9 to 4 when I first arrived, but soon changed when the British Commonwealth training plan came into effect. Airfields were being built, hundreds of instructors and crew were needed, and tradesmen to maintain. We listened to the news on the radio and read the news in the papers about the terrible things happening in Europe. How the miracle in Dunkirk saved the British Army when the Germans drove them out of Europe. We saw on the newsreels in the theaters, London and other cities burning when the Germans bombed England. We heard Hitler ranting and raving like the madman he was. The good news, the Battle of Britain, when the Royal Air Force defeated Hitler, bombers and fighters for the first time, the Nazis were stopped in their conquest of Europe. Soon my embarkation leave came through, and off I went to spend a few days at home with my family before saying goodbye. It would be more than 3 years before I would see them again. It was a long trip by Halifax by train. A huge gray ship appeared in the Halifax harbor, and we knew our 8 days of sightseeing was ended, and the next step would be on the British Isles. When we were boarded, we learned the ship was the Isle de la France, a French luxury liner with all the luxury removed. It sailed alone, depending on its speed, to avoid the Nazi submarines. We also learned how much of the luxury had been removed when we saw every deck crowded with triple bunks, and the washrooms had long lines of basins and one wall of long line of toilets on the other side, all out in the open. One could chat with one's neighbor while washing and carrying on a conversation after being seated on the toilet. We set sail before noon on the 9th day. As the Halifax disappeared, the Atlantic Ocean appeared a smooth, large swell, which soon had the ship gently rocking and dipping. There were a few absent from the mess hall at supper time, too sick to eat. Some of them hardly left their bunks the whole voyage. Most of us tried to spend as much time as possible outside on the upper deck, but found walking difficult because of the rolling motion. We were amazed at the ship's crew, who went around the deck leaning this way and that and never missing a step. As usual in the services, there were numerous crap games going on in the sheltered corners. The ship zigzagged at high speeds at regular intervals, and personally I very much enjoyed being on the trip. One night the sea was smooth as glass, and there was brilliant moon casting past in front of us. We followed the path for hours. Even as the ship did its regular zigzag, the moon path was always there. It was the lull before the storm. The next day, the wind picked up, and soon we were in a terrible storm. November is apparently a bad month to be in the mid Atlantic. The waves increased until a crew member said they were 30 to 40 feet high. I believe him as the huge ship was tossed around like a cork. Sometimes it listed so far it seemed it wouldn't come back. One night there was a terrible crash. We grabbed our life jackets and headed for the top deck, certain we had been torpedoed by a submarine. Fortunately for us, something had broken loose on the cargo hold and crashed through the wall. We weren't sinking after all. A destroyer appeared at our side during the storm, and we wondered if there were any prairie boys on it. A large number had joined the Navy. If they were, they probably wished they were back on the prairie, as the huge waves broke over the destroyer and it completely disappeared and took a terrific beating. When the storm ended, the destroyer left us. Maybe it was there just to help us weather the storm. Needless to say, the mess hall was a lonely place for a few days. Only a few brave souls with strong stomachs appeared for the odd bite. A couple of days after the storm, we were circled by a friendly place, which received a big cheer as we knew we were being well looked after. Circled by a friendly plane, which received a big cheer as we knew we were being well looked after. The remaining part of the voyage was uneventful, and at dusk, 9 days after leaving Halifax, we sailed into Greenock Harbour near Glasgow, Scotland. I have no words. The bubbles we live in now, and the luxuries we live with, and we scream and fight about certain things and what these poor families went through. Anyway, thank you for your time today. We will continue with something tomorrow. Probably won't be easy to listen to, because I think sometimes we make Remembrance Day too easy to listen to. Anyway, have a great morning. Thanks as usual for listening in.